Hey fellas, so I just recently hit 500,000 subscribers, which is pretty sick. So I thought I'd do a little AMA and also a general channel update because yeah, I definitely need a change of pace and I should probably talk about it. Also, I figured I'd put up this time lapse of me drawing some familiar looking characters for my next video, just for the sake of visual interest. Now, by far the most common question I've gotten, not just in this AMA, but in all of my comment sections, is will I make a video about blank mythology, or do I plan on returning to a series or subject I've done in the past? My blanket answer to every variation of this question is yeah, maybe at some point, I don't know. Of course, there's a bunch of stuff I've started that I want to continue, and also a whole bunch of new subjects I intend to tackle eventually, but it would be a bad idea for me to openly say, yes, I'm gonna do a blank video when I have no idea when I'd actually get around to doing it. In the past, I've had ideas that I expected to start on soon that ended up happening way later or still haven't happened. I'm just bad at planning stuff. A lot of the time, I don't even know what the next video I'm gonna make will be. One reason is probably that new topics can be intimidating. For example, Hindu mythology looks cool and surely has a bunch of stuff worth making videos on. Mesoamerican mythology looks really cool. I think I'd have a lot of fun doing character designs based on their iconography, but these traditions are totally alien to me. Right now, I wouldn't know how to even go about researching them, let alone how to do them justice. On the other hand, topics I'm quite familiar with can also be intimidating in their own way. For instance, I haven't done a Norse mythology video in a while, even though that subject should be pretty straightforward. There's relatively a small number of stories left for me to cover, and I know exactly in what order I'd want to do them. But I guess because I have such a clear roadmap and I can see all the work I have ahead of me, it's hard to muster the motivation to start again. This is a bit harder to explain, but I'll touch on it some more in my channel update at the end of the video. All this being said, if you'd like to see small bits and pieces of stuff I have in the works, including one brand new topic that I expect to start working on in earnest soonish, you can join my Patreon in the link in the description. This next question is also asked a lot: what got me into mythology? This is easy. In 5th grade, our teacher read Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief to us, and that was my first real exposure to Greek mythology, and I continued reading the Percy Jackson series from there. Then in my school library, I found Delaire's Book of Greek Myths, which is a gorgeously illustrated book covering all the greatest hits, and that kind of became my reference aid while reading through Percy Jackson. And then in 6th grade, we had a whole unit on Greek mythology, and we all had to choose a story to do our own presentation on in front of the class. I did the Perseus myth, and I just remember that being a really fun project, and that's probably what established in my mind, oh yeah, I'm into this shit. And then fast forward to me entering adulthood, I was scraping by as a freelance animator, and my YouTube channel was mostly just fan animations and shit posts that would sometimes pop off but wouldn't like make money or anything. And so I was thinking about how if I wanted to actually grow my own audience, I'd need to find a niche. And then I thought, oh yeah, I like mythology and there's basically infinite material to work with there. So I bought a translation of Hesiod's Theogony and began writing I Try to Explain Greek Mythology, and that was pretty much that. What program do I use to animate my videos? I use Blender. Yes, you can do 2D animation in Blender. There are dozens of us. Before that, I used Adobe Animate for all my videos, and to be honest, I kind of miss it. I actually really like how simple it is to use. The problem is it doesn't fucking work. It crashes all the time, it has so many bugs, yet somehow it costs over $20 a month. They haven't even updated it in like 2 years, so why are they asking for a subscription for a product they're hardly bothering to maintain? So yeah, if you want to do 2D animation, try Blender, it's free, or literally anything other than Adobe. Is shrimp bugs? Yeah. What sources do I use for myths? What a good question. Surprisingly, a lot of mythology enjoyers only have a vague notion of where myths actually come from. The main emphasis seems to be the idea that myths are this constantly evolving thing, and in retelling a story, you're supposed to make it your own. And that's true, it's most of what I do for my job, in fact, but we shouldn't miss that the bedrock of Greek and Roman mythology, Norse mythology, Egyptian mythology, whatever, is the surviving literature of those cultures. Homer, Ovid, the Eddas, the Book of the Dead, texts that you can read today, and you should. I promise they're a lot more entertaining than a Wikipedia article. And this is why, even though my main thing is retelling myths in my own style, I now make a point to put quotes from the sources I'm referencing on screen, so that you can know exactly where it comes from and what sort of creative liberties I'm taking in my version. Okay, a lot of people were asking about my art style and why it's changed so much over time. To be honest, something about this question bothers me, and I don't blame the commenters for that. This is a me problem. I guess it's hard to phrase this kind of question without making it sound like artists just flip through an art style catalog and pick their favorite and that's it. Really, there are so many elements that inform how you draw, though. There's your conscious aesthetic choices, but there's also your skill level, the quirks and limitations of your medium, the necessities of your project, and the process that you find most effective. I knew from the start that as a one-man operation, I would have to keep things very minimal. So, crumpled paper background and simple sketchy designs. And there wasn't going to be much actual animation. I'd just draw the characters once and then puppet them around like cardboard cutouts. But I actually had a lot of trouble figuring out how to do character designs that would work for this kind of animation style. But then I realized the obvious move was to make all the characters super silly and wonky looking. Basically, if the characters all look funny, then that will make the limited animation style feel like part of the joke rather than just a compromise. But then as I continued making the videos, I started feeling too restricted by such a simple style. Sometimes I actually want a character to emote or strike a different pose or look in a specific direction. And on top of that, I started getting interested in ancient art and archaeology, which made me want to be more detailed with my character designs. So now things have kind of ballooned, and admittedly, I'd probably benefit from loosening up a little. I'll touch on that a little more in the update. In a similar vein, some people were asking what's my favorite character design I've done, and that would have to be Hephaestus. I'm pretty sure he was actually the first character design I completed, and I love him. He's just a lumpy little man. It was with him where it clicked that silliness was the key to my success. How many gods are in the Greek pantheon? Shit, like at least 7. Some people are asking if I'll ever do reviews of modern media that's based on mythology, I guess in like a CinemaSins style where I critique how accurate it is. I definitely won't do that. I'm absolutely the kind of insufferable person who would enjoy doing that, but I don't want to encourage that level of insufferability on a mass scale. Online discourse has enough of that. I gotta be responsible with my power. What's my favorite video I've made? I definitely like my one-off videos the most, the ones that aren't connected to a larger series. I think I have the most fun making them because rather than trying to fit them into a consistent presentation style, I can just do whatever feels right for that particular story. Beowulf is my most successful of these and definitely one of my best videos, but my favorite is probably Hoichi the Earless. I'm really proud of the clever way I depicted the story from Hoichi's POV, or lack thereof, and how by doing that I was able to give it more of a dramatic twist towards the end. I'd very much like to do more one-off stories like that, so it'd be cool if you guys watch them as much as my other videos. A lot of people were asking about my personal favorites regarding mythology, favorite mythological corpus, favorite characters, that sort of thing. Obviously, classical mythology, that's Greek and Roman, has a huge diversity of material to appreciate. Homer's awesome. I love the tragedies, particularly by Euripides. Unfortunately, Ovid's Metamorphosis is awesome, but because that category is so broad and diverse, it's actually hard for me to say, I like this character, because characters get so fuzzy in the big picture. Like, what's Electra's personality? Sophocles and Euripides will give you very different answers. Theseus is a based Giga-Chad and Oedipus at Colonus, not so much anywhere else. And don't even get me started on Medusa. Ovid, you were cooking there, but I don't know if the consequences were worth it. With Norse mythology, meanwhile, there's relatively very little surviving material, so there's a lot of missing information, and we only get tiny bits and pieces of characterization here and there. And because of this, the seeming inconsistencies that crop up are actually very compelling. Like, Odin is the chief of the gods, creator of humanity, patron of kings and poets, and he's also a paranoid little freak who will stoop to any low to get what he needs. You can chalk some of this up to variations in local traditions and different authorial intent, just like in Greek myths. But because Norse mythology is so fragmentary, every little piece of information feels like a puzzle piece to one one big messy picture. It makes some of the Norse gods like Odin and Loki feel more like people because real people are messy that way. So for that reason, I find Norse mythology and its characters particularly fun to work with. Yeah, I should probably start making more of those videos at some point. People were also asking generally about my favorite pieces of modern media. I'm very bad at picking favorites like this, so what I'm gonna do is I have a list of categories and I'm just gonna say whatever's at the front of my mind right now. All right, so favorite movie, The Exorcist. Favorite book, also The Exorcist. Favorite song, Each New Day by Rose Melberg, but specifically her acoustic guitar rendition that only exists as a shitty camcorder video uploaded to YouTube in 2006. Favorite music artist, Maximum the Hormone, but right now I've been really into underscores, so they're tied. That's fine, I'm allowed to do that. Favorite video game, Super Mario 64. Favorite musical, Into the Woods. Oh, The Vavitch is also an awesome movie. We've established I'm allowed to choose multiple, so there you go. Favorite non-musical play, Amadeus? Yeah, Amadeus rules, so that's a good answer, but I still need to watch more plays. Okay, also for favorite musical, this is like an hour later, but I forgot somehow that Jesus Christ Superstar exists, so that's also my favorite musical. Favorite television series, Pen 15. Favorite animal, cats. That's not a piece of media, but it felt right to have on the list. Favorite animated series of Japanese origin, Soul Eater or Princess Jellyfish? Princess Jellyfish Eater Brotherhood. Ah, shit. Perfect Blue is an awesome movie, and so is Princess Mononoke. Oh, and I like Japanese breakfast. Anime made me think of Japan, which made me think of that band. Favorite mango, Akira, but Real is really good. It's about wheelchair basketball, and it's called Real, because it's so f***ing real, dude. Oh, and unfortunately, I also love Uzumaki. Favorite animated series of Western origin. Yeah, I can't lie to myself, it's Rewubby. Okay, I think that's it. Wait, no, to my favorite book, I'll add Frankenstein and Captain Underpants. Okay, that's good. What got me into animation? I've always liked drawing, and more broadly, I've always liked making things to present to people. So it was always pretty obvious that any career path I followed would involve making a piece of entertainment. But I've never been much of a collaborator, so when it came time to actually choose a career path, independent animator made the most sense because I can do everything myself if I want to. Regular soda or diet soda? Ice water and black coffee. Cold. What Bible translation do I use in my videos? In my biblical videos, the quoted text at the top of the screen will usually be from the World English Bible translation because it's public domain and it's fine, I guess. If needed to illustrate a point, I might pull up a quote from a different translation like the NRSV, but I'm sparing about that because they usually have terms for how much you can quote from them without permission from the publisher. When I'm studying the text, though, I'll reference several different translations because, you know, I can't read Hebrew or Greek, so I'm not going to take one translation's word on everything. King Jimmy, the JPS, ESV, NIV, NRSV, NRSV UE, you know, the popular kids. The Net Bible with translation notes and the Interlinear Bible are also essential for me if I want to get a sense of the specific wording of a passage. Maybe one day I'll try learning Hebrew again. But as far as my favorites to just read, they would have to be the ones translated by a single person rather than by committee, because those just have so much more personality. Robert Alter's Tanakh translation is awesome and so much more poetic than anything you would get from a committee translation. When God began to create heaven and the earth then was welter and waste and darkness over the deep, and God's breath hovering over the waters, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Welter and waste? Like, come on, dude, f***ing bars. Okay, now I think I'll do the channel update. I have to put the Jason and the Golden Fleece series on hiatus because I'm getting tired. Now, there's a lot I love about the project. It's the first time I've done a proper episodic series, and that's been a very interesting challenge. It's mostly been reading the Argonautica and figuring out the best way to chop it up into little sections that work as their own videos, but also feel like part of a continuous story. But Argonautica doesn't actually tell the entire story, so I also have to make sure it links up on both ends to the other sources I'm referencing. And that's tough because, like I I talked about earlier, different classical sources can give different versions of events and very different takes on the characters. So with that in mind, figuring out how to do character development has been very interesting. Like, I have to take Jason, who the first thing we ever see him do is he helps an old lady cross a river. And in Argonautica, he's actually depicted as very humble and caring. So I have to take that guy and figure out how to turn him into the Jason we see in Euripides' Medea and make that transition feel natural. And it's tricky. I've kind of just been figuring it out episode by episode, and I hope I'm doing an okay job so far. The other big learning experience has been working with voice actors, which is something I'd wanted to do for a while. Shout out to all the VAs, by the way. They're all lovely to work with and have been very patient with me as a completely inexperienced director. The problem, not with the voice actors themselves, but with me, because I'm not used to collaborative projects, is it requires so much more time and planning on my part. I gotta make sure I have the entire episode written before I can schedule sessions with the VAs, and it feels like I'm wasting their time if I only have a couple lines for them to read, so ideally I want to have multiple episodes written in advance, and I can't animate their scenes until I have them recorded, so that inevitably pushes my whole schedule back. I'm just not used to working this way. I'm used to being very disorganized and figuring things out as I go, which hasn't been a problem in the past because I work alone. So yeah, adding other people into the mix has been tough for me. And this is on top of what I touched on earlier about how long-term projects in general can be paralyzing for me. And I could try to just take a short break to do smaller projects, but I'd still be conscious of how long it's been since the last Jason video, and that would weigh on me. So the best thing for me to do right now is hit pause on the series and come back to it whenever it is that I feel ready. Knowing myself, I realize there's a huge risk that I'm now dooming the project to eternal limbo, but even that's better than me staying in the rut I'm in now. So for the foreseeable future, my plan is to work on whatever I feel like, whatever is most creatively invigorating at the given moment. Some of that will look like a return to form. I've been wanting to loosen things up and make something more in the style of my older videos, and I think most of you will be really happy to see that. And some of it will be completely different. I talked a little bit about how I want to show my audience the actual sources for classical myths. I have an idea in mind for a new format that would be more focused on the original text of a story rather than my comedic spin on it. I have no idea if it's something my audience would actually want to watch on this channel, but I really want to try it regardless, so we'll see. And a reminder, you can join my Patreon if you want to get a glimpse of the stuff I'm working on that I don't feel ready to talk about publicly yet. But whether you're a patron, a YouTube subscriber, or you just click on my videos sometimes when they show up on your feed, thank you so much for your support. I would not be here without you. Let's see how things go from here.